So today we will talk about pre-registration. This was prepared by me and Terhi, but she could not make it today, but we did it together. So let's move on. To think about pre-registration, let's think first as p-hacking. Do you remember from the first sessions what is p-hacking? Yeah, so the inflation or selective analysis and the misreporting of true effect sizes in published studies. So it can happen as this persistent data analysis with the goal to obtain a statistically significant result, usually to support the researcher hypothesis. And it can happen when researchers try out several statistic analysis and eligibility specifications, and then selectively report only those that produce those significant results. But so as Simon and colleagues, as they state in the article Pre-Registration Why and How, the article where we based our session today, the bulk of this problem, so the problem regarding the false findings, is caused by this selective reporting of analysis that generate these desirable results. And as they explain, so in order to test a hypothesis, a researcher often has to make many analytical decisions when conducting research. For instance, should outliers be excluded? How to define these outliers? Which covariates to include? Should parametric or non-parametric tests be used? And others. So many times researchers don't make these decisions until data is collected. And at that time, they can realize that there are many valid ways to deal with the data. And these decisions may often lead to different findings. Decades of research on motivated reasoning tell us that researchers are more likely to accept and justify the results that are more desirable, interesting, that are novel. For instance, a researcher can do two analyses, one with the outliers and another one without the outliers, and they can convince themselves that the analysis that led to the more desirable results, the statistically significant results, are the better option. And thus they report only these results. And this behavior is called the p-hacking. So I present to you this question. Do you think there is a distinct line between p-hacking and getting familiarized and learning with your data? What do you think about this? If you prefer, you can write in the chat, or you can open your microphone and we can discuss a bit about this. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's a very tricky thought in a way, because we of course all need to get familiar with our data, and you will get kind of a feel of what you have in front of you without really having the intent to p-hack, of course, in the end. So I think it's very hard, and probably kind of really evolving around the intention behind what you are doing, if you are in the end p-hacking or not.
Yes, let's see. Okay, yes, I agree with you, and it's this. My thoughts are also on this possibility of with that intention, because one thing is to get familiarized with our data, to know and to learn on our data, but p-hacking is this intention, or this choice, or only reporting those findings that go really in line with our hypothesis. So it's this different behavior, and also the distinction between what is the confirmatory research or what is the exploratory research, that what pre-registration is much about. also. But besides p-hacking, there are other questionable research practices that are coming into light. Do you know other names, other synonyms, other questionable research practices? Again, you can type it or you can share it.
Do we use p-hacking and hawking synonymously in this context, or do we use them separate? I would maybe
yes,
separate
hacking is also yes.
So since hawking would mean we're deriving the hypothesis as we go, well, we already have our data.
Yes, it's correct. Another one besides hacking. Okay, in the literature, we can find these names, these synonyms. Some authors see them as synonyms, though sometimes we see slight differences between them. As Francisco was saying, hacking is this hypothesis formulation, but after the result is known as it was an a priori hypothesis. Cherry picking is this presentation of favorable evidence and the omission of the unfavorable evidence. The fishing expedition and the principal difference that I see between the fishing expedition and the p-hacking is that fishing expedition, we don't have an hypothesis, where in most cases in p-hacking is this persistent data analysis with the goal of obtaining this statistically significant result, but to support an a priori hypothesis. And also the data mining that in a lot of cases is related or in the cases where it happens or when author sees, it's in that that aiming of seeing patterns in really big data sets. But of course, a lot of authors also see them as synonyms, and they all come together in this questionable research practices where pre-registration can be a way to deal with it. So what is this pre-registration about? So it's the act of planning and documenting analysis before data are collected. And the theoretical advantage of pre-registration is that it sharpens the distinction between these two complementary but separated stage of scientific inquiry, as we were talking in the beginning. So the stage of hypothesis generation, the exploratory research, and the stage of hypothesis confirmation research, confirmatory research. So in the first one, confirmatory research, we have this traditional hypothesis testing where the results held the highest standards of rigor. In this confirmatory research, the data is independent and it reduces the false positives. In exploratory research, it can be used to discover new hypotheses, new models, new theories, and the results deserve to be replicated and confirmed. Of course, because it is exploratory research, it is data dependent. And it's the process of also learn with our data. And reduces the false negatives, which is also important and relevant. The importance here and the idea is that presenting exploratory findings as confirmatory findings increases the publishability of our findings, but at the expense of credibility. And this is something that we should think about. So pre-registration is this plan that is time-stamped. So it has the date and the time where you submitted the pre-registration. It is permanent and unchangeable, so you cannot edit it after the submission, after the publication, though you can add new versions of it with justifications. And it is preferable created before the study, though, for instance, in those studies where an analysis will be due with data from long reports, long studies with big data. Sometimes researchers can do pre-registrations with data that is already collected. But of course, and preferably, it is created and submitted before the data is collected. And it is submitted into a public repository, for instance, as open science framework. So in pre-registration, plans can be prepared at various levels of specificity. They can be brief, for instance, only describing the research questions, hypotheses, how you will test them, but also they can include more details. For instance, how sample size will be determined, what about the handling of missing data, detailed information about the variables, for instance, how they will be coded, how will they be scored, the planned analysis, even the code that will be used. And in general, the more detail you can provide, the better, of course. But as a tip, it is easier to start with short and concise pre-registrations and to develop more robust, detailed registrations as we get along and we get more familiar with the research process. For instance, with the settings, with the experimental designs, and also the analysis plans. As we move on, so why doing pre-registration? As we were seeing, there are many reasons for us to go and pre-register our studies. And of course, maybe the main goal is to protect, again, the natural biases and prevent researchers to avoid the use of the questionable research practices as we were speaking about and as we've seen, because it promotes more robust design planning, and it can also be used as a tool to remind researchers about what to do in terms of analysis. Because since, as we know, the research process can be too long, and between the moment that we define our research questions, our hypotheses, data collection, and then we have our data. What have we decided? What we were thinking about in the beginning can start to be blurred, and with the pre-registration, everything is clear for us to analyze. And of course, it also benefits researchers by ensuring that they will get the credit for the fully planned analysis. So let's talk about some concerns about pre-registration, but also the benefits for researchers. And I would like to ask you, what is your biggest concern when you think about pre-registration? Maybe it takes too long, more work, less flexibility. We will achieve and we will have a lot of null literature, null findings, idea theft, other possibilities, all, or you are not really worried? What are your thoughts? Okay, we will learn it together. Thank you, Madeline. Any other thoughts about what can be your concerns? when you think about all this process of planning and detailing your analysis in advance?
Yeah, so I think for me it's a little bit mixed. I'm really interested in the idea. We have considered for certain studies to implement it, and then it has actually kind of failed on points like time planning or really have everything set up in time. So I really like your earlier suggestion of maybe starting short and concise, because kind of what has gotten in the way so far was these things of like, okay, we should make it really detailed immediately, and then really struggling to follow up. And well, then the next flexibility concern then maybe from other contributors that are not as positive towards this idea of pre-registering, and then it just kind of came together from different sides, maybe as well from different collaborators that of course always have an input as well on if they want to do some pure co-authoring with others, or planning an experiment with other researchers. So taking into account what they say has been kind of a major problem here and there along the way, and then the general feel of maybe being a bit overwhelmed here and there with everything that could be added to the pre-registration, but that apparently does not need to be added.
Yes, I understand your thoughts. Thank you for sharing. Yes, it also happened with me when I start trying to pre-register a study. The first one was also a complete flaw. I was, okay, I want to detail everything. And it didn't happen because then I had to start with the data collection, and there was no time for to do it everything, as you were also sharing. Then the second time I pre-registered a study, and then I failed because then we changed a lot of things, and then the pre-registration didn't make sense anymore. But as I continue to with this aim to do it, I tried, okay, let's do it in an easier way, and then let's progress with more detailed versions. And I think that really helped me. But also you were talking about having a lot of collaborators in some research, and something that can help in this process is that, for instance, in the open science framework, a person can start doing the pre-registration, but also the collaborators can come in and also work on the same file already in the file in the open science framework. And sometimes this can also help. And also the possibility to choose this more easier and simple options to pre-register. Let's see comments. Also, these tools can help a lot, as Manuel is suggesting. Thank you. So I'll share with you some thoughts and some concerns that rise in the literature. The first one is that pre-registration prevents exploration, but as we were talking a little bit earlier about in the first questions, the first question is that, okay, it doesn't prevent exploration because researchers are, of course, welcome to continue to know their data and to explore their data. But the goal here, the aim here, is to really differentiate in a very clear way what is the confirmatory and the exploratory research. So this exploration of data is not hindered with pre-registration, but it's something that comes out in a lot of forums, or also in concerns in the literature. Then the idea that pre-registration is too onerous, that it will make the process even more difficult. And within with the experience of doing that, the idea is that it makes the opposite. It makes the process easier, for instance, and the process more efficient, because in a way, in a very easy and simple way, we can have the stage of think about the design, think about collecting data, then think about the analysis. And this process of knowing the data and think about the analysis that we're going to perform as researchers, sometimes it takes a lot of time. And when we do the pre-registration, it's easier in a way that, okay, we think about our hypothesis, we detail our analysis, then we collect data, and we only do what we were supposed to do. Of course, we can have a time for knowing our data, but not the time to decide the best way to do it, or the best way to do it, because we already decided on that. And in a lot of times, in a lot of cases, it speeds up the process. Then the concern about pre-registration is bad for the scientific culture, because it may perpetuate the culture of distrust between researchers. But the thing is, okay, of course, trust is very important, but it is also important to do this distinction between the trust in researchers and the trust in the findings. And what we want is to raise the credibility in science, so to increase the trust in the findings. So also this concern is not so much fundamented in what pre-registration is all about also. Then the fourth concern that Simons and colleagues present is that maybe pre-registration does not help so much to detect p-hacking, because p-hacking is caught in the review process anyway. And the truth is, sometimes p-hacking is seen and is understood by the reviewers, but sometimes, and in a lot of times, it is not. And of course, that other people can raise the question that is, okay, but if someone wants to p-hack, they will do it even with a pre-registration, or they can do different pre-registration for the same study. The thing here is that most of the times p-hacking doesn't happen as a conscious decision. It happens because also we don't have this decisions in so clear in our mind. Sometimes it's the process that people just do things and are not so much clear on that. Also, if people will want to do p-hacking in purpose, it doesn't make sense to do a lot of pre-registrations, because they are intentionally doing something that is questionable. And also, some platforms doesn't allow researchers to do a lot of registrations. It has like a limit, or at least, for instance, in Open Science Framework, when we do a pre-registration, we can make it public in that moment, but also we can ask it for it to not be disclosed, so other people don't know our ideas before we want. So we can keep it secret, though it is time-stamped. And it is important because then when we write our study, it is important that we put, for instance, the reference of our registration, but it only comes to public when we want to. But if we don't, if we make it secret, the platform will make it public in 4 years. So it will be public one time or another one. So if a person starts to do a lot of pre-registrations, it will not be good for their profile, because a lot of pre-registrations will start to arise. And of course, we do not want to do that. So pre-registration, it is a way to help the credibility of science and also to decrease the possibility of p-hacking. And with this explanation, this author say, okay, yes, pre-registration will help the credibility of science. Also, I just wanted to share some reasons for pre-registration. These were shared by the Association for Psychological Science, and it's about, okay, let's see for us as researchers, what are the benefits? If we are concerned maybe with these benefits, we will give it a try. So the first benefit is the possibility to take credit for your predictions. As Leif Nelson, professor at Berkeley, as he wrote, in a world of transparent reporting, I choose pre-registration as a way to selfishly show off that I predicted the outcome of my study. So this possibility of, okay, I did it, here it is. The second selfish reason for pre-registration is this experience of excitement, and it is linked with the possibility of not being afraid with the results, with the outcome, because the protocol is clear, the results, the findings will be clear. It is what it is. Also, the third selfish reason would be that pre-registration prevents us from being taken hostage by our own data. So without pre-registration, it can be unclear, for instance, what the data mean, especially for low-power designs or more complex methods, for instance. So this ambiguity encourages that fishing expeditions that we were talking in the beginning. And this can take months to complete. So to understand what is the best option that we can understand with our data. So with a detailed pre-registered plan, after the data collection, data analysis is more straightforward, as we were talking about. Then to profit from online resources. With these online researchers, here the Open Science Framework, it is easy to do and to register our studies. Also to increase our reputation and self-image in science, to do things in a transparent way. And finally, this feeling of waiting for our results without fear, with the in principle acceptance. And what it is the in principle acceptance? So first we have a pre-registered protocol, for instance, in the Open Science Framework. But there is another possibility, that is to submit our protocol as, for instance, a stage 1 report. And a lot of, journals are starting to have this in principle acceptance. That means you submitted your protocol, it is reviewed. Sometimes you have to make changes, sometimes you don't, but it is published as an article, and then the journal gives you like a stamp. What the outcomes doesn't matter. They will publish your results if they are done as in the pre-registration, and if everything is well done, it is published. So we don't have to be afraid of non-significant results, because they already gave us the in principle acceptance. Okay, and with this part, I don't know if there was some kind of doubts or confusions, but if there was, please interrupt me and say, please. And so now that we are more clear about what pre-registration is about, what it is, let's see what types of research can be pre-registered. And what do you think, with what you know already with pre-registration? Do you think that it is only for reviews protocol, quantitative research, qualitative? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I have seen E pop up in the chat already from Manuel. So
Yes, it's true.
I would agree with that. From the way I have explored so far, at least OSF's page, I have seen that I think more or less all the three above A, B, and C should be possible. I have not looked in depth into all of them, but I think I have at least seen them show up.
Yes, yes, it's true. Thank you. Yes, it's true. Even though we have more options, or at least as we find, me and Terhi, there are more options for reviews. There are also options for quantitative research and also for qualitative research. Also in the PowerPoint, I put the link, and then we can make it available in our Open Science Framework folder. So then it will be easier for us to use it. And also the Open Science registration forms and templates, it shows us a lot of possibilities. So we can choose what is best for our study. So let's see a bit about the different requirements in pre-registration. As we were talking about, sometimes it's easier to start with more simple possibilities. And here for quantitative research, for instance, we have this open-ended registration that it has no requirements. We can just write a simple summary of the project. And if we want to go a step further, we can use the OSF standard pre-data collection registration that has only 2 questions. It is only these 2 questions. Then we can go for another possibility with 9 questions. Then we can go for the OSF pre-registration with 25 topics, so a lot more detailed. And then the registered report, that is that possibility to write a protocol and submit to a journal. It will be peer-reviewed and it will maybe labeled with the in-principle acceptance. The Open Science Framework released an initiative with a lot of journals that already has this protocol, because there are some journals that publish the stage 1 report, that would be our registered report, but they don't give this in principle acceptance. But here in this list, we have a lot of possibilities that grant this stamp. Right? Okay. Here, for reviews, we have the same thing. For instance, in protocols.eu, we have no given structure. We can, again, just write a simple summary. Then we have the OSF registries, where we have, for instance, 5 mandatory fields, or another one more detailed with 13 mandatory fields. And then when we go for the Prospero possibility, that is also free and it's very much used, it has 28 mandatory fields with 12 being optional, so requiring a lot more information. And so now I would like to use the time to show you 2 examples of pre-registrations. And let's go first with an example for a systematic review with Prospero. So first we have to, and it's an important tip, and of course that when we are doing our initial steps on the research, we will have to search for reviews. But here is the tip for doing this research in Prospero, because a lot of systematic reviews that are not yet published are registered here, so we can see what is being doing, so we can be more acquainted about that. So we can have this possibility to just go and search and to find out. Then it is very clear with the guidelines. They have some rules. So no for reviews within a course trainings. So if this was a course and you would like to try out, they say, please don't come here to register if we don't do it until the end, if this is just to try out, because all the registrations are peer reviewed, and this would take an immense work if everyone would do if a lot of people would do pre-registrations just to try it out. Then they also say no for pre-registrations when data extraction already started. So they say, please register, but before the data extraction has started, and preferably before also the selection of articles. Also, Prospero, it is more suited for health-related outcome. It is something that they ask the authors, what is the health-related outcome that you are using? So then, within the guidelines, we can choose the systematic, for instance, the systematic review of human studies, and we have all the process, so we can prepare in advance and then just to start our process in Prospero when we have everything detailed. So let's see an example of it. So here is the details. As you see, they explain all the procedure and all the things that we have to comply with, and also they disclose if it is mandatory or if it is not. Okay, so this was a systematic review that we have pre-registered in the past. And as you see, we have the title here, we have the authors, then they disclose already the citation, the review questions, search where and how we will do our searches. Then it also allows the authors to specify the search strategy, and we can upload other types of documents. For instance, our key concepts, our main concepts, the other natural terms that we search, and everything can be detailed also in other documents and then uploaded in Prospero. Also, the types of study that we would include, the condition or domain being studied, the participants, intervention and exposure, the comparator that in our case it wasn't suitable, the main outcome, the additional outcomes that we were investigating, how the data extraction would be doing, namely the selection and coding, and we can detail everything, risk of bias, strategy for data synthesis, analysis of subgroups and subsets, then some contents, and then in the end you can put every information about the team and the type of research and language that it is all about. And then in the end, you can give the information also for other authors that, for instance, search your pre-registration about the stage you are in. So, for instance, if everything is completed and someone wants to do something that is based on your findings, maybe you can contact the authors. And in the end, we have the versions. For instance, we start with a version in February 2021, but then we wanted to update it. And for instance, in our case, we updated it with some aspects in our questions, in our coding, and in the selection of articles, but also in the stages. And everything is detailed, and you can have the track of all of the process. And then in the article, also the reviewers can have this information and follow your procedure. I don't know if there are questions about it, but I find that it is very useful for when we are doing these pre-registrations to also search for similar ones, as we do in the process of writing an article, but to do it also with the pre-registration. We can go there and also to see what others wrote about it and to have more hints about how we can do it, how we can make it work. And also to finalize with an example of a project regarding quantitative correlation study using the OSF pre-registration possibility. Here it is also very simple. We can just go for start pre-registration, and here they ask us if this if we already have a project in OSF, because all single pre-registration is associated with a project, but you can start with the pre-registration and then you insert the information about the project, or you can do it the other way. Also, in the beginning, you are asked to choose between the various types of options to do the pre-registration. As we were seeing, those that are more easier, that require less information, and those that require more information, more details. So here, as you see, for the possibility of saying, okay, no, I don't have yet a project here in OSF. So, okay, you start with uploading and giving information regarding your data in your project. But then if you say, okay, yes, I already have a project defined, because as maybe you know, you can also use OSF to have there all of your information in public, but also in private. So you can use it to store information of your project. And then you can say, okay, I already have a project, but now I want to do a pre-registration. So in an easier way, you just choose your project. You say yes, you choose your project, and then you can go for new registration. Also, something that is useful, for instance, for the dissemination of your research, is that, for instance, here we have the pre-registration of our study, and then we can link it with the paper once it is already published. And we can link everything, and it is easier for dissemination of our results, of our studies. And also here, as you are seeing, there are a lot of other resources that we can upload here. For instance, materials, the analytic code, our supplementary material, and everything is easier for others to see. As we were talking about, a draft can be edited by a group. You can add a lot of different attachments. You can make it public or make an embargo for up to 4 years, as we also talked about. And you can add or make links, resources afterwards. So I can also share this with you. This was a pre-registration of this cross-cultural study. And here, as here you see the contributors, the description of the study, the type of the registration done, and the date that we submitted. And then here we see, okay, the description and the theoretical information and theoretical background of our study, the hypothesis, the study plan regarding the study type, the study design. And as you see here, we can, for instance, disclose already more information about our study. For instance, here we disclosed how would be our design how our variables were associated. Or we can detail our statistical analysis for it to be more clear when we already have our data. We can insert information and the way for instance, here it would be a multi-level model, and we detailed here how the model would be, how the variables would be in the model. So everything detailed. Also the explanation of existing data, because for instance, in our project, and it was a cross-cultural project, we start collecting data in 2 countries, and then we move on to collect data in different and more countries. So not everything was at the same time. And we used it also to explain that, okay, there is some data that already exists, but we didn't use it, and we will only use it as a group. Also data collection procedures, our sample size determination, the variables, and as you see, the information that we defined by our analysis, and to plan everything. Okay, just to summarize, as we were seeing, and we already talked about this, the registered reports and this possibility. In the first stage, the manuscript only has the introduction, the proposed methods and the analysis, and maybe pilot data if applied. And in the second stage, authors have to submit the last parts. Most of the times the introduction and methods are the same. They are already registered, they are already submitted, published, so they don't change. And then only the information regarding results and discussion comes as a novelty. So as you see here, you can also put the information that was registered and that is confirmatory, and the information that was unregistered, so exploratory information. But as we were talking about, this is like an optional and a more difficult step of doing pre-registrations, but we would want to give you a hint on this. So here, just to share with you some of the journals that are offering registered reports. From that list of around 3,000, we choose some that are more related with education or with psychology, and that could be useful for our group. So here you can have some possibilities. And also, if you want to know more about the protocol registration or about registered reports, you can use this reference for a start. So thank you. I don't know if you have some more thoughts or questions or comments, but this was all that we prepared for today. And thank you.